When the funeral home staff began stacking chairs, a woman in a slate coat stepped into my path and pressed a library card into my palm. She did not introduce herself. She only said, "Your grandmother trusted paper more than people. Read the number on the back, then go home alone." Inside, my relatives were still circling Opal Lennox's casket like shoppers around a clearance rack. Aunt Selma argued for the silver tea set. My mother, Darlene Reed Carr, demanded the diamond brooch for the immediate family, which somehow never included me. My half-brother Mason announced that Grandma Opal had been broke for years, so we should grab the antiques and stop pretending grief was a hobby. No one noticed me slip outside. They rarely did, unless I was being blamed for existing. In my car, I flipped the card over. A string of digits sat under a stamp that read, Merriwick Public Library. Harmless, except my grandmother never did harmless. I drove to my apartment above the little shop where I worked, Paper Harbor Books, and locked the door. I dialed the number. Bracken and Sloan, LLP, a man answered, calm as a metronome. Probate desk. I said my name, Cassia Reed. He paused, then replied, Ms. Reed, we were instructed to speak only with you, and only after you contacted us first. Your grandmother was precise. A courier arrived later that afternoon and handed me a dark cream envelope. The handwriting on the front was shaky, but the attitude inside was sharp. Cassia, if you are reading this, I am dead, and your family is already bargaining over my furniture. Do not waste your tears. Save your attention. Do not tell them anything. They will not see you as family. They will see you as a portable bank. Opal had always looked like an eccentric retiree in hand-knit sweaters and worn slippers. She brewed tea with exactly 3 sugar cubes and dared anyone to comment. Everyone called her stingy. I knew she was hiding. The letter went on. I let them believe I had nothing because they only behave when they think there is nothing to steal. I kept my money quiet and my opinions louder. I am not leaving my fortune to your mother. I am not leaving it to Mason. I am letting it pass a generation and land with the person who showed up when there was no reward. A small brass key was taped to the next page. Behind it sat documents from Bracken and Sloan and a trust statement for the Lantern Trust. Total assets, 34 million. I stared until the number stopped looking like a prank. The folder listed rental buildings, warehouses, and shares in a dull investment firm called North Key Capital. My grandmother had built her empire the way she made tea, patient, consistent, and mildly judgmental. The last paragraph was underlined twice. They will come looking, Cassia. Let them. Their greed will do most of your work. When the moment comes, do not punish them with cruelty. Punish them with reality. Reality is cheaper and far more effective. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Come back. We are dividing Opal's things. Do not take anything you did not earn. I looked at the brass key, then at the word earn, and felt a laugh rise in my chest like a match to dry paper. I typed back, I am on my way, and slipped the key into my pocket. I returned to the funeral home with my best harmless face, the one I learned after years of being talked over. My relatives were now arguing over a lamp. That table is antique, Aunt Selma declared. It is also ugly, I said, and the room went quiet, shocked that the quiet girl had opinions. My mother recovered first. Cassia, do not be difficult. I am not being difficult, I replied. I am being accurate. They sent me home with a box of books because no one else wanted them. It was the most Opal Lennox ending possible. The woman who taught me to read, leaving me the only treasure they refused to fight over. The next day, I went to Paper Harbor Books, brewed the bitter staff coffee, and smiled at customers who asked for something light. I recommended mysteries, petty but appropriate. Then I called Bracken and Sloan. We met sometime in the early morning. I wore a plain cardigan and shoes that suggested I feared luxury. Mr. Sloan, silver-haired and precise, slid a folder toward me. Your grandmother created the Lantern Trust years ago, he said. She built it through companies with names designed to be boring. Greedy people get sleepy around boredom. Respectfully, I said, that is genius. He explained the basics without drowning me in legal language. The trust was mine, the key was real, and the paperwork was locked down. I could access funds immediately, but any loud move would reach my family fast, because my mother had been calling the firm for updates, like probate was a streaming series. What did Opal want? I asked. He tapped her letter. She wanted you to stay quiet until you decided what lesson you want to teach. She did not want you to burn the house down. She wanted you to stop letting it burn you. By the time I left, my mind was a neat pile of plans and warnings. Then my mother called, cheerful in the way she only was when she needed something. Mason has a presentation, she said. A few investors are coming. We need the house to look right, and Mason needs a new laptop, just temporary. What is he presenting? I asked. A social platform, she replied, vague as fog. Something about pets and wellness. It is the future. So is clean water, I said. We still have bills for it. Cassia, she snapped, do not mock your brother. How much is temporary? I asked. A few thousand, she said, then softened her voice as if debt could hear. You have savings. You do not have children. Your life is simple. My life was simple because I could not afford complication. She said it like it was my best quality and my only purpose. I do have savings, I said. They are small. Well, she replied, smiling through the phone, you can contribute to the family for once. There it was again. The assumption that I existed as a spare wallet with a name tag. After the call, I stared at Opal's brass key and remembered her drafty kitchen, her swollen knuckles, the afternoons I spent there because no one else bothered. I remembered how my mother laughed at her cheap little house, how Mason called her the broke wizard. Cheap, broke, wizard. Meanwhile, the woman had quietly built a fortune large enough to rearrange our entire family tree. If they wanted a contribution, I would give them one, just not in the way they expected. Mason's presentation happened a few days later at my mother's house, the one with the chandelier and the lawn trimmed into obedience. I arrived sometime in the late afternoon with a bottle of cheap sparkling water, because it matched my reputation. Mason greeted me in a blazer with the store fold lines still visible. Try not to talk about books, he said. Investors get nervous. Excellent, I replied. Maybe they will invest in honesty instead. My mother swept in and scanned me from shoes to hair. You could have tried harder, she said, then turned to a cluster of strangers. This is my daughter. She manages a little bookstore. Very quaint. Quaint. The word people use when they mean harmless. Mason clicked through his slides, grinning beside the logo for Furry Fusion Labs. His pitch was simple. Build an app, call it wellness, charge everyone for breathing. One investor asked about revenue. Mason said vision, like it was currency. My mother beamed as if he had invented oxygen. Later, she cornered me by the hallway mirror. Do not embarrass your brother, she hissed. If he lands funding, we are all saved. Saved from what? I asked. She smiled too quickly. From stress. The truth arrived the next morning in a call from Mr. Sloan. Ms. Reed, he said, your family has accumulated significant debt, multiple cards, a recent refinance. They are likely seeking funds from you. Vindication is a strange comfort. It warms, but it burns. That afternoon, I sat above Paper Harbor books and opened the trust folder again. Opal had left more than money. She left instructions on how to move quietly. I created a new holding shell that sounded dull enough to put greed to sleep. Cindergate Financial Services. Through Cindergate, I purchased a bundle of consumer debt from a regional lender. Hidden inside it was my mother's newest loan, the one she used to freshen the house for investors. Stress, apparently, required marble countertops. When the confirmation email arrived, I read it once, then again, because it felt unreal that I now owned the problem my mother was about to beg me to solve. She called that evening, voice trembly and bright. "Cassia, sweetheart, we have a small emergency." "What kind?" I asked. "The bank is being unreasonable," she said. "They want a payment sooner than expected. It is just timing. Can you help?" There was the ask, dressed up like a compliment. "I cannot," I said. "I do not have that kind of money." A pause. Then her voice turned sharp. "What do you mean you cannot? You live alone. You have no responsibilities." I stared at my laptop, at Cindergate's tidy dashboard, and felt my pulse settle. She had no idea I now owned the question she was asking. "I have responsibilities," I said. "Just not the ones you assign." Her tone snapped like a rubber band. "If you do not help, do not expect to be treated like family." I let the silence hang for a beat. "Understood." When she hung up, I opened Opal's letter again and reread her warning about reality. Reality would arrive soon. Not as cruelty, not as chaos, as a lesson. First, I would let them dig. Then I would hand them the shovel. Bracken and Sloane scheduled a formal reading of Opal Lennox's will. My mother treated the email like a lottery ticket and announced it in the family group chat with dramatic enthusiasm. On the morning of the meeting, I arrived early, wearing the same plain cardigan and shoes that screamed underpaid. I wanted them relaxed. Relaxed people make sloppy choices. My family swept in later, dressed like they were about to be photographed. My mother clutched a folder of printed emails. Mason wore sunglasses indoors, which told me his ego still had a lease. When they saw me, my mother frowned. "Why are you here?" "Opal invited me," I said. Mason snorted. "This is about inheritance." "Yes," I replied. "It is." Mr. Sloane led us into a long conference room where Mrs. Bracken sat with a stack of files and the expression of a woman who had seen greed in every font. She did not waste time. "Opal Lennox established the Lantern Trust. The sole beneficiary is Cassia Reed." The room made a sound like disbelief swallowing air. My mother laughed once, too loud. "That cannot be right." Mr. Sloane slid documents across the table. "It is correct. It is signed, witnessed, and filed." Mason stared at me. "Cassia works in a bookstore." "I also read," I said. "It seems risky to underestimate readers." My mother's face changed, disbelief melting into calculation. "Cassia, family should share. We can find a fair arrangement." Ms. Bracken lifted another file. "There is additional information. Opal anticipated disputes. She also anticipated your financial condition." My mother stiffened. "What does that mean?" "It means," Ms. Bracken said, "that several of your outstanding debts are now held by an entity affiliated with the Lantern Trust, Cindergate Financial Services." Mason frowned. "Who is that?" I met his eyes. "It is me." Silence slammed down. Mr. Sloane continued, calm as a blade. "Cindergate holds your refinance and multiple unsecured balances. Collections are pending." My mother's voice cracked. "So you bought our debt?" "I bought your consequences," I said. "You created them. I just filed them." Mason shoved his chair back. "This is insane. You cannot do this." "I can," I replied. "And I already did." My mother reached for the oldest weapon she had. "Cassia, you are my daughter." "And you told me I was not family the moment I said no," I answered. "Now we are practicing consistency." Ms. Bracken slid one final document forward. "Ms. Reed is offering a restructuring agreement. If you sign, collections stop, and the home will not be seized. If you refuse, standard recovery begins." My mother grabbed the paper with shaking hands. "What are the terms?" I spoke evenly, because revenge works better without fireworks. "First, Mason gets a real job and keeps it. No more pitch parties funded by loans. Second, You and Victor enroll in financial counseling and submit weekly spending reports. Third, the house is sold and you move into a smaller place already purchased under the trust. It has a yard. It does not have a chandelier with an ego. Mason sputtered. You are humiliating us. No, I said. I am educating you. Humiliation is what you did to me for free. My mother stared at the signature line like it was a cliff. I remembered Opal's underlined advice. Punish them with reality. Reality was sitting right here, holding the pen. They signed. Not because they forgave me. They signed because panic is the only language greed speaks fluently. Within weeks, the big house went on the market. My mother told her friends it was a fresh chapter, which was her way of saying, do not ask why the chandelier is leaving. The lawn crew disappeared. The glossy catalogs stopped arriving. The family image began to look less like a portrait and more like a costume. Mason tried rebellion first. He announced he would build something bigger and refused to apply for jobs. Then Cindergate sent a polite reminder that consequences have due dates. He showed up at a local pet supply store soon after, wearing a name tag and a smile that looked like dental pain. He texted me late one night, furious. This is beneath me. I replied, it is a floor. Try standing on it. My mother lasted longer with denial. Financial counseling offended her spirit, mostly because it required numbers. But week by week, the spending reports arrived. Fewer impulse purchases, fewer emergencies that sounded like shopping, more silence. Silence can be growth, if it is not just sulking. Sometime after the move, I drove past the smaller house the trust had purchased. It was simple, with a modest porch and a yard that did not pretend to be an estate. My mother was outside pulling weeds. Victor was repairing a fence board. They looked smaller in that yard. Not poorer, just more honest. Back at Paper Harbor Books, I kept my routine. I stocked shelves. I smiled at customers who said, "This place feels like a secret." It was. Only now the secret protected me instead of trapping me. Through the Lantern Trust, I paid off the store's mortgage and set up a small community fund for seniors in Merriwick who needed help with heating bills and groceries. No press releases, no ribbons. Opal would have thrown a sugar cube at me if I turned kindness into marketing. My mother called later, on an evening that felt quiet and heavy. For once, she did not ask for money. I did not know, she said. About Opal. About you. I thought you were fine. Fine. The word that means ignored. I was fine, I replied. I am just not available for being used anymore. A long pause, then she said, smaller. Opal chose you. She did, I answered, because she saw who showed up. Another pause, then softly, I am sorry. It did not erase anything. It did not fix the past. But it was a start, and starts are rare in my family. A few days later, Mason came into the bookstore in his work uniform, holding a bag of dog treats like it was proof he had touched reality. He looked around at the shelves and said, "You really stayed." "I like stories," I told him. "I just stopped letting you write mine." He swallowed. "I did not think you could do this." "I know," I said. "That was your first mistake." After he left, I went upstairs and took Opal's letter from the drawer. I set it beside a photo of her in worn slippers, holding a teacup like a judge. The family did not get my money. They got my boundaries. They got my lesson. And I got something I had never inherited before. Peace, sometime in the early evening, settling in like a book returned to the right shelf.